And welcome to Positivity Bias. We're on chapter 30, and we're kind of wrapping up the whole book in a certain way. And we're talking about practical application. How do we actually put this stuff to work? And the theory that we're speaking about is establishing a Weltanschauung, establishing a worldview, a way of seeing things, that has a positive bent to it at every turn. And part of that comes to this understanding, and we've talked about this before, and this is the thesis of the Hasidic approach to joy, is that there's a God, everything God does is good, and nothing happens without God's investment. So therefore, it's all good. It is all good, right? Getting a grasp of that and putting that to work, that's the bigger challenge, right? And so one of the things that we talk about here, if we see the Torah, Selena, now we're going to add the gag factor, yes.
Yep, that's you. That is you.
What?
Don't show it to your chicken; he'll die of fright.
It said lioness.
They eat chickens.
Bringing the fun back into dysfunctional family. So, if we have an understanding of Torah as Torah is the blueprint for creation. In other words, if we understand that anything that exists in the world has its source in Torah, and that the Torah is the blueprint for it. So this is really not that you can see this back in the spiritual world, but rather it begins with the spiritual world and has a physical manifestation down here in the physical realm. And that the Torah is the blueprint for that. Then everything is in the Torah as a lesson to be learned. Torah etymologically is related to the word hayra, and hayra is a lesson, a guide, something to be learned, right? So the idea of Torah is to learn from the Torah how we are to be, And this is a huge difference, because one of the things that we talk about, that Rebbe would highlight the difference between Torah and secular wisdom by pointing out that secular knowledge is judged and valued on its intellectual merits, not its practical application per se. Therefore, in the secular world, the merit of philosophers and scholars is not related to or measured by their personal behavior. How they live is deemed irrelevant to their intellectual discoveries and contributions. And the example that Gemara brings up is, of course, Aristotle, when Aristotle was behaving immorally, and his students called him on it, and he said, "At this moment, I'm not Aristotle the teacher. I'm Aristotle the human being, the person, with all of my human flaws." But basically saying that the philosophy is philosophical, but you can't necessarily expect me to always live up to it, right? So the Torah doesn't go that way. The Torah is a hayra ba'avida, a lesson for how we are to lead our lives, how we're supposed to behave. And the Torah has always been, we see in Pirkei Avos, the ethics of our fathers, we attach the behavior to the sage to show how the sage behaved in the way he was speaking, that his words and his behavior were not different. And that is truly who he actually is. And so if a Jewish teacher does not live up to their teachings, they are essentially invalidate the teachings. The idea can't be real if the person saying it doesn't live up to it. The whole point coming back down to that Torah is a hayra ba'avida, is a lesson for our lives, a lesson for how we should behave. It's how we are to be in the world, right? And the example of it, of course, again, comes back to the Talmud that says, if someone says that he has, when we talk about Torah and Avoda, learning Torah and serving of God, and if he says he has Torah but not Avoda, he's totally steeped in Torah, then he has neither. Because if you're not living what the Torah prescribes, then you don't have the Torah itself either. So it's a matter of living the purpose itself. A guide to life. One of the interesting stories he brings up here, I like this idea that when a great speaker finishes speaking, a great speaker, they erupt and applaud and they go home. When a great leader finishes speaking, the audience jumps up and says, let's go, let's do it, let's make it happen, right? So we want to look for Maisa B'Pel, actual action. Who's going to actually make a change in the world? Ariel Sharon, Prime Minister of Israel, had spoken of the Rebbe. The Rebbe was perhaps the greatest believer I've ever met in the God-given strength of the Jewish people. The Rebbe truly believes in the God-given strength of the Jewish people. And I think, and Ariel Sharon would say that I don't think the Jews themselves believe as strongly as the Rebbe does in their own capacity. And he aired one time when Ariel Sharon was saying about organizing the Jewish people, and the Rebbe corrected him. It's not about organizing the Jewish people, it's about mobilizing, right? Getting people to move into action. I saw this at the conference. We're doing suicide prevention, and the leader stood up on a chair with his back to the audience as if he was standing on a bridge ready to jump. And the other facilitator asked, who's going to do something? And everybody, raised a hand or something like that, but nobody got up to do anything. I remember Stephen Covey at a conference I was once at with Stephen Covey. There was about a couple of hundred people in the audience, in the auditorium. Stephen held up a $50 bill. And he said, who wants this $50 bill? And then he just stood there holding it. People waved their hands, they raised their hand, till somebody finally got out of their seat and tentatively, slowly walked up to him until they finally took it from his hand. And he said, nothing happens without action. If you want something, you have to take action to making it a reality. You can't just want, you have to take action. And that's the whole point, right? Philosophizing is a nice idea, but at the end of the day, you have to take action. The same thing when it comes to giving tzedakah. You can want to help a poor person all day long, but until you actually do something, he hasn't been helped. Right? Action. Action is the main thing. So the Rebbe was speaking regarding identification must be coupled with action, practical observance of the mitzvahs. In other words, to draw closer to God, we have to do godly things. We have to follow the mitzvahs, do the mitzvahs, and one mitzvah, even a small mitzvah, will lead one train after another, to do one thing after another. And so the idea is to take a step forward, is to actually create action, actually do something, right? And the Rebbe spoke to him and said, one can always add. The Rebbe continued, no one is perfect. I am not complete in my mitzvahs. And the fact that I'm not living in Eretz Yisrael makes me incomplete. So many people stop their Jewish journey before it has even begun because they're afraid that there's no point if they don't fulfill every commandment. This all or nothing attitude robs so many people of their Jewish experience. It also deprived the world of many good deeds. The Rebbe's eyes, was not about doing everything, but about doing another thing. Each act was unlimited potential to bring light into our lives and light into the world. And one of the examples they shared was Canadian rabbis were gathering together to meet with the prime minister. They were going to give him a Kiddush cup and talk about, sanctifying the world, right? But he's not Jewish. He doesn't have a mitzvah of making Kiddush on Shabbos. So, better to give him a prayer book where he could actually say, Maida'ani lefanecha, praise to God, that I admit to God, our praise to the Lord, right?
Mm-hmm.
So practical application, something we can actually do where the rubber hits the road, right? And then at the same time, we say that I've long said regarding a child's birthday, right? Don't come up to a child and say, I meant to buy you a gift, but the thought is what really counts. No, wants the gift, right? The kid wants the gift, right? That's not thought doesn't not what counts. But the flip side is also true. To do something without thinking, to do something without actually having an intention behind it, it loses some of the depth as well. So words that come from the heart will reach the heart. An old Hasidic saying is that which comes from the heart will reach the heart. So if you speak any words sincerely of apology or regret or gratitude, words spoken from the heart, they come to the heart. So we want to reach out and inspire change and suggest to those around us, again, one more act of goodness and kindness, one more thing that we can do to spread joy in the world. And I think that's the concept here we're talking about is having this theory that we can make the world a better place. We can reveal the godliness in the world, the goodness in the world, by just shedding light and focusing on the goodness. And there's always plenty of negative to say. There's always things to count negative on. But can we see the brighter side? Can we look for the brighter side? Can we focus on that? I think that's the one of the focal points of moving forward is making sure that we look for and find and shine a light on the positive things and the good things that we can see in our day-to-day living.